Hi everyone, you're with Lucy from Artshed Angel, and I am today doing day 18 of the live art journaling and self-development YouTube hop. So you make sure that you comment on this page and also subscribe to my channel and head over to live art journaling and self-development, and you can see where all the other hop participants are. So this is the project that we're doing, and it's done in alcohol inks and watercolors. Let's get started. Okay, so what I'm starting off with first is some watercolor paper. Now, do make sure you subscribe to my page because we are checking subscriptions for some prizes that you can win in live art journaling and self-development. All the info for this will be in the description and all the products used. So what I'm doing here is something really fun. I'm actually using an applicator, and I have this alcohol ink called Incandescent, and it's a clear alcohol ink with glitter in it by Couture Creations. Now, if you don't have this, you don't need to use this in the project, but what it does is gives a beautiful glitter effect to your paper, and you're able to watercolor straight over the top of it, which I think is really great. So if you have a little look here, you can see that it's got a lovely little glitter look to it. I love now using this under my watercolors. So I'm now going to use some watercolor pencils to color this in. So this is something that you can color with your watercolor pans or watercolor pencils. I'm just doing her in standard colors, but you could do her in all different colors or make her however you like. So what I'm doing here is just putting a skin color layer down, and then I'm going to put some pink for her cheeks and color her lips and just make her a little bit pretty. Now, it's not hard to color straight over the top of these alcohol inks. The alcohol inks evaporate and you're left with just the glitter which is stuck to the page, and it doesn't come back off with the water, which is really nice. So when you're doing lips, make sure you do a little bit of shading so that the light hits the lips in a way that gives them a bit of shape. Now, it's important to make sure that you do some shading when you do a face, and I'm just using a light grey here. I'm also going to use some purple in a minute as well, but this just gives us a little bit of our shadow areas, and that starts to give your face shape. Now, I never do a line on either side of a nose, not a hard line. So if you want to do a shadow down the side of a nose, just make sure the shadow is fairly light, because noses don't have joins to faces. So, what I'm doing here is just using my brush with some water and blending the colors. Now you can see how beautiful that glitter is. It works really beautifully. Now I'm drying this off in between, because what I find is if you color directly over with watercolor pencils, sometimes you end up with it pilling the page, and I don't want to do that. But if you look at my brush, I'm not actually picking up any of the alcohol ink as I'm doing this, which is really, really nice. So just drying it off again. And now I'm going to add some purple just to give this a bit of shape. So I've got the base colors down, and I'm going to use some purple to give some shadow areas and also a bit of shape. But even though I'm going to put a little bit of a line on either side, I'm only doing a very, very light line on her, on the sides of her nose. You can see here I've just done the smallest little bit, and now I'm just wetting it, and again it paints beautifully over the top. Always remember to go from the light side, the light color, into the darker color if you want to get a soft edge as well. And I'm being very careful with my brush here that I don't end up with really dark areas. And you can see here, this is where I'm doing the edge of her nose, which just turns out to be a shadow. It's not a hard line. Now, if you don't have alcohol inks, you can still do this project. You don't need to have alcohol inks to do this project. You can still do her in just your normal watercolors, and even the next part you can do differently. So she's just my 2020 end of year goddess. Hopefully she's sitting there and she's dreaming of a better 2021. We certainly do need to have a better 2021. So I'm using a permanent black pen here, and I'm doing some fine detail, putting some eyelashes, just nostrils in her nose, and just going around and putting eyebrows on. Now you could have painted these on, it doesn't really matter, but I've done it in the dark pen because I'm going to cut it out and I'm going to leave that black edge around when I cut her out, because she's going to fit into a background. And this is the background that I'm doing now. I have two different alcohol inks here. I've got an alloy one and a standard one. So it's a indigo blue, and I'm also using ice blue. So instead of putting big droplets of alcohol ink here, I have actually put some alcohol blending solution. The two colors I want, I've just put my blending pad into those colors, and then I'm tapping. So you can see here I'm tapping the background so that I get a nice even smooth effect. Even though I'm getting some little dots and things like that, that actually does smooth out quite a lot. This is a great way of coloring cardboard. I'm using Yupo paper here, but you could very much just use normal cardboard, and it is a great way. Alcohol inks are great for coloring cardboard because it doesn't cause any bowing in your cardboard. So I'm just drying this off. I use a hairdryer because the hairdryer gives us a really nice cool air to dry it off, but it doesn't warp our Yupo paper. Now, in the template that I have given, there's also the shape of her hair. Now, with her hair, I am going to cut that out of the Yupo paper, and I'm going to make sure that I have that little slit where her forehead can go into it. So I'm just drawing around. Now I have given you a template for this, and you can create her as well. Now again, if you don't have Yupo paper and you don't have alcohol inks, you can certainly do this with watercolors and do quite a pretty effect. And I'd love people to actually put some up in our group of live art journaling and self-development using different products to do this, because it's always nice showing a product and showing how well it works, but it's sometimes nice to see what other people do and what other products they use to make it. So you can see here I've just done the marking of it, and we just do her forehead. So make sure you cut this with a craft knife, cut around so that her forehead goes underneath. But you do want it in one piece like this, because what we do to it next makes it really effective. So I'm getting the other alcohol inks. I'm using yellow, I'm using fluoro yellow, fluoro purple, I'm using metallic alloy lavender, and I'm using fuchsia in the glitter accents. And I'm also using the little alcohol blowing tool from Couture Creations. Now, Couture Creations are an Australian company, but you can buy their products all over the world. I know in Holland and England you can. So perhaps if you like this project, you might have a go at doing them. So this time I'm just putting down colors, going around and blowing it together. So I'm not trying to create anything other than a sort of mottly background, because I think this starts to look a little bit like batik. So having the different colors, some of it's got metal in it, some of it's got the fluoro colors in it, and then some of it even has the glitter from the Glitter Accents fuchsia in it. And this is really pretty. But if you don't have alcohol inks and you cut this out of watercolor paper, you can do some really groovy washes just with your watercolors to create a very similar effect, and that can look really nice too. So once I've dried it, I can now put it all together, and this is how I assemble it. So I've got my girl, I've got her forehead into the hair where I've cut the slit, and now I'm just going to go around with my black permanent pen and put a nice darker edge around the outside. This is something that you don't have to do, but it does kind of highlight the edge of her hair or turban or whatever you'd like to call it. I think it's quite pretty. All the colors, certainly does make her look like a goddess. So just go around with your pen and do this. So once I've done this, I'm just going to make a couple of flowers because we don't want her neck cut off where it is. So I'm going to make a couple of flowers that we can put in front of her. So I like to just use a dab of a color that I like. That's the Glitter Accents. I'm just blowing the color around, and I'm putting a colour inside it. I love to make these sort of very rough, kind of abstracty flowers with the alcohol inks. But again, you could do this with your watercolours as well. Now, if you didn't want to use a face like this, you could actually cut a face out of a magazine to do this little project. So it's really up to you. There's so many things you could do. So hard to decide on a colour. So I'm just using my alcohol blower just to blow the ink around a little bit, and then I'm going to cut these flowers out and assemble. I also like to sometimes cut my flowers in half so that I can have some running on the edges, and so just to do a nice finished edge at the bottom of the page, I'm just doing these flowers. And I like the fact that I've used the blue in here just to, take that blue from the bottom of the page up through the page. So this is my finished goddess with her beautiful alcohol ink hairdo and glittery watercolors. Please make sure you check the description out so you can see where all the products are, and make sure you subscribe. The link to live art journaling and self-development is in the description, so head over for the other artists. You're with Lucy from Art Shed Angel. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.